So I was debating making this video, but some people wanted a little bit of lore on me. And this all started because I was watching the movie Whiplash with my wife the other night. And I realized something about that movie, and that's that I was in a similar situation with my job. Uh, for those of the for those of you that don't know, Whiplash is a movie about a kid that goes to a music conservatory and ends up getting recruited by the best uh, orchestra or band at the conservatory, but the conductor is absolutely psychotic and goes from nicest guy ever to I'm gonna tear your face off in like less than 10 seconds. It's a really good movie. It's a really, really, really good movie because it goes to show you that when people want something, when people want to be the best at something, uh, then they are willing to put up with more than the average person would at any sort of job or uh, group or whatever, right? It doesn't matter what it is. If you want to be the best at something, whatever it takes to be the best, you're going to do anything and everything that it takes. And this movie, this kid, Neiman, takes abuse from the director, Fletcher, non-stop. He plays mind games with him. He brings in more people to make him think he's not good enough or that he's being replaced. He slaps him. He does all sorts of crazy stuff to him throughout this movie. And Neiman, the kid, just sort of puts up with it. And at the end, as much as people don't like the ending of this movie, I actually like the ending of the movie because, like I said, it kind of applied to me at a time. The director, Fletcher, brings him into a group that he has been conducting that's supposed to be good, and then he basically sets him up for failure by telling him the wrong music that he needs to know. But at the end, as Neiman, the kid, is about to quit, he turns around and goes, you know what, I'm not going to let this guy screw me over, and he ends up playing so hard and so fast on the drums that the conductor, finally gives him some sort of approval, right? And I know I'm rambling here about this movie. I mean, you could easily go watch it anywhere at this point. I think the movie was made in like 2014. It's not a new movie. But I was in a similar situation. I went from making shit money at a retail job and realizing that that's not going to cut it. So I spent my spare time studying to get my A+ in IT. And as I was studying, I was still working. And then finally I passed it, got my certification, and the first thing I did the day after I passed was immediately start looking for an IT job. And we had this guy that was a regular customer that would come in and buy parts from us because I was working at a computer store, for lack of a better, like a micro center, right? But only in Texas. And this guy would come in and buy stuff from us, and I'd be like, oh, well, how come nobody wants to help him? They'd be like, oh, well, he's an asshole. You don't want to talk to this guy. You don't want to deal with him. Just let him do his thing. Leave him alone, right? And then one day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to help him. So I would help him. I'd talk to him about whatever, blah, blah, blah. Ask him what he needs. Didn't push anything on him. Just let him do what he does, right? As the customer. So one day he came in, he was checking out, and I was like, hey, if you happen to know anybody that is hiring for IT, I just got my certification and I'm looking to get in somewhere, And he was like, well, I need somebody. I'm hiring. And I was like, okay. So maybe a couple days after that, he set me up with an interview. And, I told the people there at the store that I was working at, I was like, hey, I'm going to go work for such and such. And they were all like, oh, you're crazy. You're not going to make it a month. he's gonna tear you a new one, you're gonna come right back, all kinds of stuff. And I was starting to think, I was like, well, maybe I don't want to go work for this guy, right? I have all these people telling me I can't do it. I have everybody saying I'm gonna hate it. I have all these people saying all these negative things about working for him. And I was like, you know what? I need money. You know? I need a better job. I need a career. So, fuck it. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to go work for this guy. So I did. And this was about 5 years ago. No, it's going on closer to 6 years. So I worked for this guy for about 2.5 years. 2.5 years, right? And in that 2.5 years, I'm pretty sure I was on the verge of developing a chronic anxiety disorder working under this guy. Because identical to the movie, he could be super nice 1 minute. He could be the nicest guy ever. You know, somebody that you would love to get a beer with, right? And then something could go wrong and he would be the meanest fucking person on the planet. And he would insult you, he would scream, he would, you know, make you go home early, he would you know, tell you to quit, threaten to fire you. Everything in the book. If you watch this movie, that's pretty much how it was like working for this guy. And there were times where I would basically start to second guess myself. I had another guy that worked with me that had even more credentials than I did. That was, I remember I was outside and he came up to me and he was like, I'm genuinely starting to believe that I am stupid. He was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I can't work for him. I gotta go. I gotta leave. And he did. He quit. And there were any number of people that had quit before he did, before I even got hired. You know, it's telling when somebody has a reputation of being just almost impossible to work with. But I stuck it out, right? I stuck it out. I kept my head down. I did everything to the letter, exactly the way he wanted it. I would respond exactly the way he wanted. I would do every little thing exactly the way he wanted, because that is exactly what he wanted. No questions. Do what you're told. Respond how you're taught. You know, repeat back. It was almost like conditioning, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it. And some of the people that were already there that had made it through and were still working for him, you could hear it in their voice, you could see it in their eyes, you could just tell that these people were already in this box of how they should behave, how they should perform, how they should speak, just everything. And eventually, once COVID hit, all these people were laid off with the exception of myself and my manager. And then we brought in another guy, and then, you know, the same cycle started with every new hire. And then it just got to a point where my manager was finally let go because it reached management how he was treating people. Again, identical to the movie. But looking back on it, I understand both the movie Whiplash and everything that I went through, how some of these people will push you over the edge in order to make you better, right? To make you the best. And I don't agree with that method of teaching, but I can't say that it doesn't work. But it only works on a specific type of person. I guess I am that type of person where I will keep going and keep doing out of spite. You know, if you keep telling me that I'm a failure, I will keep doing what I have to do to prove that I am not. And that's just how I'm wired. So that movie resonates with me in that sense that, you know, the kid wants to be the best, you know, fuck everything else. I'm going to do this. And this is the only way that I'm going to get there. Because a lot of the stuff that I learned under my manager, even though there were times where I literally wanted to break down and fucking just cry. And I think I did a couple times. That when everything was said and done, a lot of that stuff is still with me and is a reason that I am successful and why I am still at the same job that I was at, you know, over 5 years ago. So a lot of the people going back to the movie complaining about the ending, because at the end he finally gets Fletcher's approval and everybody's like, yeah, but at what cost, right? Well, if you're looking at it from a perspective of everybody else, then there is no cost, right? Because at the end of the day, it only affects Fletcher and Neiman, you know, the student and the teacher. In my case, manager and employee. Now I'm the manager, and I still use a lot of the stuff that I learned. Not necessarily in the same way. You know, I'm not a dick to people. But the fundamentals and the way I should behave and the way I should speak, you know, when it comes to a professional environment, have been helpful, right? So, you know, I got asked, well, what did you have to deal with? You know, you had to answer the phone whenever it rang. Doesn't matter when, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what you're doing, you answer the phone. If you call somebody because it's something work related, you have to say exactly whatever this guy was sending over instant messages. You know, he would listen. We had cameras in our offices that were watching us and listening to us at every moment of the workday, right? So if you were on the phone with a vendor or something, he'd be listening or watching on the cameras, and then you'd get a message saying, no, say this. No, do this. You know, hang up the phone. And if you didn't do that because you felt uncomfortable, he would walk over, you know, start screaming at you, scream at the vendor, and then make you hang up. And that was how it went. Yeah. You know, if you did something wrong, he would make you feel stupid. If you didn't do something the way he told you, he would scream at you and tell you what you were doing wrong, why you were doing it wrong. If you wanted to do something your way, he would tell you no, only his way is the way that works. It was just all kinds of things. It was to the point where I also got to that point, was like, well, maybe I am stupid. Maybe I'm not cut out for IT. Maybe this isn't the right job for me. Maybe, you know, all the second guessing that you would do if you had somebody breathing down your neck, you know, 5 days out of the week for 8 hours a day or longer. But, you know, I would sit there and I would go, okay, no, this is what I want to do. This is what I want my career to be. You know, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to stick it out. Even my parents were telling me to quit. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And it worked out. So when I'm just saying, you have to go watch the movie. You have to watch the movie Whiplash. Because everything that I'm saying right now, everything that I went through is almost identical to that movie. Minus the actual slapping part of it, right? There's a part where he slaps him across the face to try and get his point across. That never happened. This guy never touched me or anybody else. It was all mental and verbal. For lack of a better word, you could say abuse. And some people would say that that's abuse. But in the end, it's kind of like being forged in the fire, right? You come out of this situation being a better and stronger person. And in many ways, that's a good thing. So, thinking back on it, it was 2.5 years of hell. If I'm being honest, it was rough. It was really rough. It was really, really, really rough. And I've done some rough jobs, physical labor and you name it. I've done all kinds of stuff. This was by far the most mentally numbing situation that I've ever been in my life. And I don't agree with it. I don't agree with that method. But at the same time, if you're like me and if you've been through something similar to that, then you understand what I'm saying about feeling a sense of accomplishment for going through something like that and then coming out the other side on top. So, yeah, just a little bit of lore video for y'all. I usually don't like talking about stuff that I've been through, and I'm pushing 40. I've been through a lot of stuff. And that hopefully, if you're going through something like what I went through, like what the kid goes through in that movie, then maybe you can gain some clarity on what to do and how to deal with it. Because not everybody can handle that. And that's okay. But you have to recognize, all right, I can't deal with this anymore. Just like my coworker did. He said, I can't handle it anymore. I'm done. And if you steel yourself and you tell yourself, yes, I can do this, and I'm better than this, and if you see a goal at the end of it to the point where you're like, nah, I'm going to stick it out, then you get it. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time, no more Wheezy lore.